Hi, everyone. The Scientists in Every Florida School Initiative, a program led by UF Thompson Earth Systems Institute and the Community Scholars Institute through Valencia College, are excited that you're joining us today. I'm Rachel, and along with my colleagues Brian and Stephanie, we'd like to welcome you to our Friday Q&A webinar series. So each Friday at 3 p.m. for about 30 minutes, scientists will present on their area of expertise, followed by a question and answer session. So to learn more about our programs, you should be able to visit the links on the websites listed at the end of our presentation that you'll see. You can also find this information in the survey that'll be at the end of the presentation. So today we're joined by Dr. David Shipman. He's a marine conservation biologist who was awarded the Marine Science Educator of the Year in 2014 and named one of the top environmentalists in South Florida in 2016. So as you think of questions during today's presentation, please type them in the Zoom chat window and one of our moderators will ask David for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Shipman.
Great. Thanks for having me, everyone. I am excited to get to talk to you today. I hope that everyone is safe and healthy wherever they are. I am coming to you from our apartment in Washington, D.C. I did used to live in Florida. I got my PhD at the University of Miami and spent 6 years living in South Florida and looking at sharks there. That's what the photo of me and some of the ones on the upcoming slides are from. But now I live in Washington, D.C. So I am a marine conservation biologist who studies sharks. Here we go. These are pictures taken in and around South Florida of me working with sharks. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do and what a marine conservation biologist is and what that means. And then I want to give you as much time as possible to ask me questions, especially our younger viewers. Kids ask the best questions. I get just great questions every time I do something like this. Adults never ask me what my third favorite dinosaur is. I love talking to kids. So I study sharks. And I study how to better protect and conserve and manage sharks, because sharks are really, really important to a healthy functioning ecosystem. They're predators and they help keep the food web in balance. And when we're talking about the ocean, the food web that they help keep in balance is an ecosystem that is a source of food for billions of humans and a source of jobs for tens of millions of humans. It really matters that we get our managing of the ocean right. And when you start to lose shark populations, it can destabilize, it can mess with the whole food web in ways that are really hard to predict, but are often really bad and often really unexpected. So our goal is to better understand sharks so we can better protect them. The work that I'm doing in these photos was part of the University of Miami Shark Research and Conservation Program run by Dr. Neil Hammerschlag. He was my PhD supervisor. And this is some of our ongoing research there is looking at just sort of what sharks are found off the coast of Florida. Where do they go? What do they eat? What do they do? Basic questions like that we don't really know the answer to. And we need to know the basic stuff like that so we can better protect them. Now that I'm in Washington, D.C., I'm working more on the policy side, on making the rules. I work with environmental groups here in Washington, D.C. I work with scientists all over the world. I work with government agencies and government people here to help better use science in order to protect sharks. Because many species of sharks are in trouble. The species in the lower left there is a great hammerhead shark. They're considered critically endangered according to the IUCN Red List, an international group of scientific experts, and they're protected in Florida waters. But they're still in big trouble once they leave Florida waters. And we're trying to better understand their biology and their behavior and things like that. So again, I also do a lot of public education efforts like this. I love getting a chance to talk to members of the public, especially students. And I appreciate the Community Scholars Initiative and the Scientists in Every Florida School program for giving me this platform. I want to give you as much time as possible to ask questions. So any questions that you have about sharks, any questions that you have about marine biology, any questions that you have about ocean conservation or what it's like being a scientist or anything like that, I'm happy to answer. The one thing I'll stress is I am not, I know a lot of people's questions these days have to deal with this virus that's going around. I am not an epidemiologist, I'm not a public health scientist, so I can't answer those. But anything that you want to know about the ocean and specifically sharks, I am happy to answer. Uh, and I invite anyone who has follow-up questions later or wants to learn more to follow me on social media. I'm one of the most followed scientists in the world on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Why Sharks Matter, all one word. And I'm always happy to answer questions that people have if we don't get to your question here. So how do you guys want to handle this? Brian, you're reading me questions? Is that the...
Sure. Please keep writing your questions into the chat box. I'll be moderating. I'll be asking the questions to Dr. Shipman. And again, please write more and more questions. I'll be going through the chat on here, on Facebook, and write as many as you can. So we're going to start with Trip. Trip is in 7th grade, and his question for you is, what kinds of sharks live off the coast of Florida?
Oh man, there are actually a lot of sharks that live off the coast of Florida. The most common ones, some of them you can see in the photos here. In the upper left and in the lower right here, what you're seeing is a nurse shark. And that's one of the species of sharks that actually does not need to swim constantly in order to breathe. They can sit and they can pump water over their gills. That's the most common large shark species off the coast of Florida. There are also a lot of blacktip sharks, which are smaller. When you see those crazy videos from helicopters and stuff of just the tons of sharks right off the beach, those are blacktip sharks and also spinner sharks. These hammerheads in the lower left, those are found in Florida waters. Also bull sharks, tiger sharks, sandbar sharks, which are my favorite. Follow #BestShark on Twitter and Instagram to learn more about why I love those guys. I've dubbed them the best shark. But there are lots of species, depending on how you define found in Florida. If you mean spend some or all of their time ever, then there's a lot of different species. I think like 30 or 40 species have been found at some point off Florida waters. But those are some of the most common.
Hannah wants to know, in your opinion, what shark is most influential to keep the ecosystem in balance?
Yeah, so a lot of sharks are really important in terms of keeping the ecosystem in balance. And that's because they're predators and they keep prey populations in balance. And let me give you an example that might make it a little easier to understand. Where I'm from in Western Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh, we used to have wolves. And we killed all the wolves because wolves are scary and wolves are bad, and who wants wolves in your backyard? And now there's too many deer, and there's not enough food for all the deer, and there's not enough space for all the deer. So all the deer are going into people's backyards and causing a ton of property damage. They also are spreading disease to humans, like Lyme disease. And that's all because we lost the predator at the top that was keeping things in balance. So that same sort of thing can happen in the ocean. And there are lots of species that have similar levels of impact. There's not really one that's the most. But in general, higher up on the food chain, bigger sharks that are which are usually bigger sharks, though the biggest sharks are filter feeders. Higher up on the food chain is generally has more of a impact because there are fewer individuals. At the mid-level, at the small 4 or 5 foot long shark range, they're having the same sort of ecosystem role as something like a big grouper or a big snapper or a barracuda. But once you get higher, they get to be some of the only things at that level of the food chain. And when you're the only thing at a certain level of the food chain, there's less room for error. That's a good question.
Tia wants to know, how often do you swim/dive with sharks, and what species do you interact with most often?
Yeah, so I actually don't scuba dive at all for my research. I do it for fun. And I actually don't know a lot of marine biologists who scuba dive for research. And that's something I want to stress because I get a question about it. I've gotten a question a lot about this lately because there are lots of people who medically are unable to scuba dive. And some of them have heard that that means they can't be a marine biologist. And that's just not true. There are actually lots of marine biologists who never go out on boats. Some of my favorite marine biologists get super seasick and have never been on a boat in 20, 30 years. So I do love scuba diving, but I do it for fun. I've been scuba diving with Caribbean reef sharks most commonly. I've also seen bull sharks, tiger sharks, a couple sandbar sharks, a few species of what are called sharp-nosed shark, which are another very common species off Florida that no one's ever heard of. They're 3 or 4 feet long. So yeah, I do scuba dive and I do scuba dive with sharks, but it's just for fun. It's not part of my job or the research. We do what you're seeing in these pictures, which is fishing for sharks and then bringing them alongside the boat to work them up for research purposes. Great question.
Jimmy, who's 6 years old, asks, why do sharks have cartilage?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So let me back up and first point out that sharks do have cartilage and what that means. So sharks have skeletons just like we do, except ours are made out of bone. Theirs are made out of cartilage. Hold out your arm and pick a point about halfway between your wrist and your elbow and try to bend your arm. My virtual background is freaking out when I do that, sorry. You should find that you can't bend your arm there. That's because your arm is made of bone. It's very strong, but it's very rigid. It doesn't bend. Now crinkle your ears. That's cartilage. Sharks' entire bodies are made out of that. And it makes it more flexible. It's also lighter and heals faster. In terms of why animals have a particular feature or a particular trait, we don't know. But there are advantages to it for sure, and that's that it's lighter and faster, or lighter and heals faster. That's a great question.
Gabriel asks, how big were baby megalodon?
Ooh. So megalodon is if you've ever been to an aquarium or science museum and they have those giant shark jaws you can stand in and take a picture, I think there's one of those that's set up at the Florida Museum, or at least there used to be. That's megalodon. Picture a 50-foot long great white shark that could bite whales in half, and that's a megalodon. And they used to be in the ocean. They are not anymore. They are definitely extinct. So we don't really know how big their babies would have been. They were extinct before they were humans. But probably 6-7 feet long would be my guess, based on extrapolating from other known species of sharks. A great white shark, when it's born, is like 4 feet long, a little more. Other species of sharks, when they're born, can be very, very small indeed. Like nurse sharks that you see here, I've seen babies that you could scoop up with a little like fish tank net. Yeah, good question. The answer is we don't really know, but I would imagine a baby megalodon a newborn megalodon would probably be larger than an adult human.
Caleb is wondering, can sharks get viruses? If so, what types of viruses can they get?
Yeah, the answer is probably. I don't know for sure, because that's not the sort of work that I do, but there are lots of viruses in the ocean. Lots. And some of them can affect humans. There's something called Vibrio, which is a particularly nasty virus. It's a type of virus that the classification for them is the flesh-eating viruses. And you can guess why they're called that. I know that viruses can infect some fish. I assume they can infect sharks, but I don't know that for sure. There's also, so the situation that we're dealing with now with the COVID, it's a zoonotic disease. What that means is a disease that was in animals and jumped to humans. And there are absolutely zoonotic diseases that can jump from fishes to humans. There's something called fish handler's disease. Can sharks infect humans with something? Probably, though there hasn't been a lot of documentation of this. And I've never heard of it affecting one of my colleagues who study it, but we're always very careful to wash our hands after we touch any wild animal and before, because you don't want to get them sick.
Bruce wants me to ask, what is your favorite fossil shark? And aren't sharks cooler than dinosaurs? I think so, and hope you do too.
Oh man, we're gonna start something here. Great. So Megalodon is a cool shark. I do like them. A shark, if we can expand it to sharks and their relatives, which are the skates, the rays, and the chimeras, there was a chimera called Helicoprion, or the whirl-toothed shark, or the buzzsaw shark. They have like a rotary saw in their lower jaw. Look up a picture of this. It's insane. So they would be my favorite, but they're not really a shark, but they're a shark relative. If I have to pick shark, then I would have to go with Megalodon, I guess. That's a boring answer because everyone likes those.
Gabriella is wondering, if sharks didn't exist, how would that affect the oceanic ecosystems?
So if there were never sharks there would probably be something else in that role. If sharks were there and then we lost them, which is happening for many species right now, which is why I work on these conservation issues, if there were sharks and we lost them, that would be a different story. We would see this sort of widespread food web destabilization, prey populations growing out of control, and then with so many prey populations, what they eat would go down. Sometimes they eat things like seagrass beds or kelp forests. And with so many prey species, they would just destroy the whole kelp forest or destroy the whole seagrass bed. In short, we don't really know, but it would be very, very bad if we were to lose all the predators.
Iris wants to ask, how are protected marine parks, or how effective are protected marine parks for sharks?
So that's a surprisingly dicey question, and it's something it's hotly debated in the scientific community. So a marine protected area, part of the problem is that term means different things to different people. But I'm going to use the technical scientific definition of an IUCN Type 1A. What that means is it's a part of the ocean where no fishing at all is allowed. Not fishing for fun, not fishing to catch food to sell it. And also you can't do other things there like offshore oil and gas development. Those, if they're large, can help some species of sharks. There are a lot of marine protected areas that are set up to protect sharks, and some of those work pretty well. There are also a lot that are set up just without really thinking about what the goal is, and those can be problematic. There are just saying no fishing of a particular type in this particular area doesn't help that much. There are also some species of sharks that are so they migrate so much and they swim so far that you just can't have a marine protected area big enough to cover their entire habitat. So for those it's tricky. The goal right now that an international group of scientific experts has called for is that we want a full 30%, almost a third of the ocean, to be in these fully no-take marine protected areas by the end of the year 2030, so a little less than 10 years. Right now, we're at like 4 or 5%, so we've got a lot of work to do. They can, even the ones that don't help sharks, though, I want to note, they do help a lot of other things. So marine protected areas are a great tool. They just need to be established with science in mind, and they need to be well enforced. Otherwise, if you just have rules but no one gets in trouble if you don't follow the rules, then that doesn't really help anything. Great question.
Susan asks, what's your workday like working in policy?
What's my workday like working in policy? It's a lot of phone calls, it's a lot of emails, it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of writing. Before I was working from home all the time, like everyone is now. It was 2 or 3 days a week. I would have a meeting somewhere in the Washington, D.C. area with an environmental nonprofit group or a government agency or a museum, or I've had a few meetings over on Capitol Hill. A lot of just checking in with people, a lot of meetings where we talk very, very dense policy details, a lot of planning. But I'm also, in addition to the policy stuff, I'm still a practicing scientist and I'm teaching a class at Arizona State. So it's busy. I'm also writing a book and doing a lot of talks like this. So my typical day is very busy, but I enjoy it. This is what I wanted to do my entire life, and I'm getting to do it and I love it.
Hannah is wondering, if someone is interested in working in marine conservation, what should they do in order to make that a reality?
Yeah. So I want to stress an important point here, that marine biology and marine conservation biology and marine conservation, these are related things, but they're different things. And depending on your goal, you might want to focus on one or the other. Marine biology is just studying the ocean and the animals that live there. Marine conservation is just working for an environmental group to advocate for, to lobby for, to ask the government for stronger laws. And marine conservation biology is a mix of that, and that's what I do. So marine conservation biology using science for environmentalism is newer and a little more complicated, and there are fewer people doing it. It requires that you have a very good understanding of the science and a very good understanding of the policy and the laws and how to persuade people. If you just want to do one of those other things, it's still tricky, but you don't need to know 2 entire fields worth of stuff. In general, if you're interested in becoming a practicing research scientist, you're going to need to do what's called graduate school. That is college after college. So after I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, then I went to a 4-year college, and then I got my master's, which took 3 years, and then I got my PhD, which took 5 years. So my dad joked at one point that I was in 23rd grade, and he was right. It's a lot of school. So it's a lot of learning. It's hard, it's challenging, it's tough, but it's really rewarding, and I love getting to learn new things. I love getting to one of the coolest things about being a scientist is sometimes you get to be the first person ever in the whole world to know something. You discovered it. No one knew it before. And then you get to tell other people all about it and why it's so cool. I love that. But it was a lot of work to get here for sure.
Ryan.
And most marine biologists, if you're considering this as a career, most marine biologists are employed by a college or university, or by a government agency, or by an environmental nonprofit group.
Ryan, who's in 1st grade, asks, what is the largest shark in each species? Maybe you can name one or two.
So the largest shark species that's out there is the whale shark. That's actually the largest of any kind of fish. Picture it, they're the size of a school bus. They're massive. The second largest shark is called the basking shark. It's a little bit smaller, but still very, very big. And the whale shark and the basking shark both are filter feeders. That means even though they're so big, they don't hunt prey. They just scoop giant chunks of water out and they filter out the good stuff from there, which is plankton, very, very tiny animals, crabs and shrimp and tiny fish. And they need to do this. They need to eat so much of that little stuff in order to feed an animal that size. Some of the smallest shark species is called the Dorf lantern shark, and it's about the size of a human forearm, so a little, about a foot. So there's a pretty big range in shark size.
Leela asks, what's the oldest shark ever that's still alive?
So the Greenland shark, which is a deep sea species that lives under Arctic ice, they are the longest lived vertebrate animal in the world. They can live to be over 400 years old. They're not considered adults until they're in their 150s. That's a long time to be going through puberty. The Greenland sharks also eat polar bears and reindeer. So I really like them. They're super cool.
Noah asks, how and why do humans tag sharks?
So in the lower left image behind us here, you can see that there's a sort of silver cylinder on top of the hammerhead shark's dorsal fin. That's a tag. When we say tag, generally what we mean is a GPS telemetry tracker. And anytime that hammerhead shark's fin breaks the surface of the water, it broadcasts, it says, here's where I am with GPS coordinates to satellites in orbit. And we can track where that shark goes anywhere in the world. The reason why we do this is because we need to understand where they go in order to know how to protect them. If this is important for things like setting effective marine protected areas. If you're trying to protect hammerheads and you set a marine protected area where hammerheads never go, that doesn't help. There are lots of websites where you can track tag sharks, tag whales, tag sea turtles for free. And you just see a map of the world and you see where sea turtles are right now, where sharks are right now. It's pretty cool stuff.
Kelly asks, what is the best thing humans can do to help sharks?
That's a great question. So the biggest threat facing sharks as a group is unsustainable overfishing. And let me tell you what that means. So fishing, when we talk about fishing, we don't mean going out for fun with your family member to try to catch one fish at a time. When we're talking about people who are fishing to provide food to sell for you to buy at Publix or something like that, or at a seafood restaurant. And you can have sustainable fishing, which is you're not taking too many fish out of the ecosystem. You're not taking too many fish out of the ocean. But a lot of people don't do that. They do what's called unsustainable overfishing. They take way too many fish, and that's why so many species of sharks and other things are threatened. So the most important thing that I tell people to do is don't eat unsustainable seafood and eat sustainable seafood if you want seafood. And how you can tell is you can get this great guide from an organization called Seafood Watch. It's run out of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and you can get a little app for your phone. You can get a little piece of paper that fits in your wallet, and you tell it where you live, and it says okay, here's seafood that's available in your area. Anything on this green list, you can eat it and know that it's healthy and delicious and good for the environment. Anything on the yellow list, you can have every once in a while. Anything on the red list, maybe don't eat that. That's bad for the environment. So that's the single best thing that most people can do right now.
Lucy, who's 9 years old and wants to be a dolphin doctor, asks, why do sharks have multiple rows of teeth and why are they loose?
Yeah, so sharks, they can't go to the dentist. If something's wrong with their teeth, they're in trouble because they're predators. They need to eat, they need to bite prey to live. So sharks have sort of a conveyor belt system on their inner jaws. I had a model of this somewhere, but my home office is something of a disaster these days. So they have a conveyor belt system that just new teeth are constantly coming out, and you can see this in sort of rows. And the advantage of that is they're just constantly growing new teeth, so it doesn't really matter if they lose a tooth here or there. It's a really useful adaptation. Was there another part to that question?
That was it. Why do they have so many rows of teeth and why are they so loose?
They break off sometimes, and that way it doesn't really matter if they break off because new ones come in. New ones are coming all the time. A single shark can go through thousands of teeth in their lifetime.
Jason asks, why do hammerhead sharks have hammer-like heads?
Yeah, so sharks have this electrosensory system. I have a hammerhead model here. They have the ability to sense electric fields given off by living things. So even if a prey animal is hiding under the sand where you can't see it or hear it or smell it, they know it's there because they can sense its beating heart and the electricity it's making, which is crazy. Hammerheads have that shape because it's extra surface area for that electrosensory system. They sweep their head back and forth across the bottom like a person at the beach looking for buried treasure with the metal detector. They also use that weird shape to pin stingrays and flatfish to the bottom, and then they can munch on it.
Architior asks, if I don't eat seafood, what's the second best thing I can do to protect sharks and their habitat?
Other things that people can do to help protect the ocean, use less single-use plastic if you can. Reduce your carbon footprint if you can. Donate time or money to environmental nonprofit groups or to scientists in your community if you can. Write to your elected officials and to ask them what they're doing to protect the ocean. These are all great things that people can do to help.
Dr. Shipman, before we wrap up, do you have any final pieces of advice you'd like to leave everybody with?
No, just wanted to thank everyone for the chance to talk to you today. And if you have any questions I didn't get to, find me on social media. I'm at Why Sharks Matter on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
We want to thank everybody for joining us on this call today, and especially Dr. Shipman for taking part in this collaboration between Scientists in Every Florida School and the Community Scholars Initiative. Once again, you can learn more about these programs by visiting our websites. There is also an important thing for us to share with you regarding this particular programming. You can find it on our social media and YouTube pages, so you can go back to watch or review again. The questions that we have not gotten to, we will be sure to have Dr. Shipman answer, and we'll post them there as well. If you would, please give us some feedback with the survey following this call. That would be super helpful. And we invite you to look at our daily dose, where you will find all kinds of enrichment activities for families and students to do at home during these times. And also follow us on our Friday Q&As, which will be at 3 p.m. every Friday with scientists like Dr. Shipman. Our next one to look forward to next week will be with the Croc Docs from the University of Florida. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.